Hello, welcome back to my channel. I'm SpookyLith, and we're here on episode number 9. So I was really ill. I've been really ill for the past few days. I still am ill, waiting for the doctor's appointment tomorrow. But I'm on some painkillers right now, and I'm feeling better. So time to do another video. While I feel capable of doing it. So I had a video planned, as you can see. I've got my tabs ready. However, just today, I'm sure many of you are aware, Kanye West was live on the Alex Jones show, and it was very quite a special broadcast for us to pick apart and look at. It's a lot of stuff. We do know Kanye West, I should be saying, has a history of just being a wild card in general. But then there he is, shows up to the Alex Jones show, he's wearing a mask, and he's using props to make jokes, and it's really surreal. And then he starts talking, and of course, as you can see on the screen, he makes some interesting comments, says some interesting things, and quite an explosive interview from Kanye West by Alex Jones. So lots of content coming out of the interview. For those who haven't seen it, I'm sure you'll be seeing the highlight reels appearing online very, very soon. You know, everything he said was just the things that you don't go live on air and say. Some people are using that as a positive marker of what he's done. Like, look, he's going up there and he's brave enough to say the things that people don't say. Obviously, that's a lot coming from the white supremacist crowd. It's just a lot. It's just a lot to process, isn't it? So because of this happening, and because of something else I was going to talk about anyway, I figured I might as well just focus this episode on this particular topic, and then we can go back to our regular content that's waiting for us on the next episode. So of course the big conversation, and this is where we bring in our other story, which is regarding Twitter not enforcing its COVID-19 misinformation policy. And it really just, and obviously this here about Liver King as well, we'll quickly talk about. I'm sure you've heard about the Liver King scandal. But again, the key thing to come out of this Kanye West interview and the stuff going on with Twitter and just the stuff that's sort of coming out, and it seems to be one of the bigger talking points right now, just out there, is this idea of free speech and the right to say anything you want, whenever you want, wherever you want, without consequence. And that's one of the big talking points. That's one of the big debate points right now, is people feeling like, this whole thing about cancel culture, feeling like if they go onto their platform, say certain things, there's potential for them to be basically removed from the website or removed from the premises, right? And of course, this is a big deal because for people, especially people like Donald Trump, Kanye West, and other celebrities, these are people who are effectively running their businesses off of these pages, such as Twitter. And of course, when they get removed from these platforms, or when they get targeted en masse on these platforms by people who are not happy voicing their opinions, it can be really damaging to these people's careers, politicians. It can really hurt their career and their long-term record, so to speak. So of course, we've seen it happen a bunch of times. People go on Twitter, make a controversial comment, find themselves banned, and they're no longer able to tweet to their millions of followers on the website, effectively losing their voice to millions of people. Now, you can see just from that why this would be such an important issue to a lot of people, because we do live in the era of social media platforms and social media influencers, and people in a large way are running their careers from these websites, whether it's someone with a small shop selling their products on Instagram, or whether it's a major celebrity such as a Kanye West, who has millions of people that do tune into his Twitter page, and even the media taking what he says on that page and using it and referencing it as a fact, as a piece of this person's career. So it's understandable why there's this push for this idea of free speech. However, I think a lot of people who are making this argument have kind of lost themselves a bit and lost their point a bit in what they're trying to achieve when they're pushing for this action. So, as we saw with Twitter, Elon Musk decided to buy Twitter because he didn't like the way it was being run, and he felt it should be a more open platform where people can go on there and say whatever they want without fear of some kind of retribution from the website. And of course, this is targeting, people like politicians and influencers, and people like himself that rely on these pages to communicate with their followers, and maybe they want to push certain ideas, or maybe they hold certain ideas that they feel they can't share on these websites without fear of losing their accounts and getting banned. And of course, Elon Musk buying Twitter was his way of saying, I'm going to make this website work in a way where people like myself can come on here and can say their true opinions without having to worry about having their career harmed by losing all these followers and whatever else, right? So there's a big push for this idea of freedom of speech. Whenever someone is cancelled, whenever someone is banned, people do like to bring up the fact that, look, that person's got free speech, they can say what they want. However, and I feel like this is something that's obvious that I think people have kind of missed sort of lower down. I'm not saying the celebrities themselves don't know this. I'm not saying Elon Musk doesn't know this because he went and bought Twitter because he did know this. But I think a lot of people who are just involved in the conversation seem to be missing this part, which is that at the end of the day, when people are calling for free speech, what we've got to remember as people is that we already have freedom of speech. And what I mean by that is, as it stands, you can go sort of out into the world, into your country, into your I don't even know what to call it within country, into your nation, into your country, and say anything that you want. You already have the right to do that, and that does extend to things like social media, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, whatever, right? You have the legal right to go anywhere you want and say anything you want. Now, in the UK, we actually do have hate speech laws, meaning that our idea of free speech isn't quite as free as what the Americans believe. However, we do still have a general freedom of speech in our own way, which is that you can go and express any view you want, any political stance, etc., and speak freely about that, criticize the government openly and freely without fear of legal retribution. But what you can't do here is go out and basically commit what we call a hate crime. But another way of putting it, to make it simpler for people to understand why we have this law, is that we're effectively saying you can't go out and say things that might instigate another person into a reaction, into violence. And that's why it's labelled hate speech. That's what hate speech is. It's spreading hate. It's saying things to people to rile them up, to offend them in such a significant way. And I say significant in terms of history, legally, and just setting precedents for the culture, for the British culture, which is that we don't want people in the streets saying these things to another person. And of course causing that person to potentially feel and react in this certain type of way. So we do limit people being able to say things that can be considered hate, especially when directed at an individual, although you don't have to direct it at anyone specifically. Hate crime is hate crime. If you say something to inspire hate, inspire violence or acts of terrorism, then yes, that is a breach of the law and you can receive legal retribution. So the UK does have, we don't have total freedom of speech like the Americans do. We have a different version where you're free to express any ideas you want, but you're not allowed to spread sort of hate speech or violent speech, right? So not quite the same, but in the spirit of what these people who are having this conversation are trying to achieve, we do have the same thing, which is that we should be able to go anywhere, at any time, any place, and say anything that we want without fear of legal retribution. Yes, we do consider racism, misogyny, etc. as hate crimes, but we also put that in the same category as a violent crime, which is that this is something you're saying to someone to intentionally offend them in a way that's highly likely to inspire a reaction, to spread hate, to spread violence, to spread potential for those things. And that is the one thing we differ with America, because Americans are legally allowed to say racial slurs, say anything they want to anyone they want out in public. It doesn't matter if it inspires violence. At the end of the day, the physical aggressor is the physical aggressor, and they of course have quite robust self-defense laws. So their approach to hate speech is different. They don't restrict it. The only difference between them and us is that we do restrict hate speech because we don't want that violent culture. We don't want that separation in our language here. But, rather than try to qualify it, what we'll do is focus on what is the same. And again, it's this idea that I should be able to go on Twitter and express my political views without fear of the government ripping me out of my house. And that's what free speech in America is about. And that's what freedom of speech of any kind is about anywhere that you go. It's the idea that I should be allowed to say anything and not have to worry about someone coming and policing my words, right? So this conversation is happening because people are going onto these social media sites such as Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and they're saying things or posting things that ultimately lead to them being banned, and then they're looking at this situation like, well, hang on a second, this is just my opinion. Why am I being removed from my platform, having my career affected, possibly ended, because when we'll get to that, but possibly ended just because I shared my opinion? And it's a fair enough argument, especially when we're looking at it from that legal perspective of, look, I'm legally allowed to say these things, so then why is it that I'm being deplatformed and being taken off of this page and having my career affected when legally I've done nothing wrong? And this is what I was mentioning in a previous episode, which is the idea that you've got to be careful about what ideas you push for, because you've got to remember that those ideas can and often will also apply back to you. So if we make it law to have if we say legally you have to refer to a person the way they want, so if someone says you've got to call me a he and you view them as a she, right now legally you're allowed to call them a she still without legal repercussion. But if we change that law that says that if they say you have to call me this, then you legally have to call them that, it then creates a precedent where anybody can then do that and be protected legally. So then we'll have to start calling each other all kinds of ridiculous names because people will do that just as a reaction to this being a legal precedent. So as it stands, we don't have that written into law. Instead, in the UK, we have hate speech. And in the case of America, they do also have hate speech. I will call them rules because it's not a law. They're not going to legally, you're not going to get arrested for it. But on these websites, they have policies in place that say no hate speech. But we'll come back to that in a moment. So again, just this idea that, people feeling like they have free speech legally and being legally protected to do something, and then finding out that the websites or the platforms have removed them for saying those things. And this is where we bring in this idea that, look, just like you have the right to say anything you want and sort of go anywhere you want, those other entities, those other individuals, those businesses that are run by individuals covered by the same laws also have the same right to remove you from the premises. It's a private premises, it's private property. If you go to a bar, they say everything's okay here but no hate speech, and then you start spouting hate speech and the bar says, look, I want you out because I don't want this kind of thing happening here. I want all my customers here. I'm not singling out any particular group and refusing to serve them here. I don't do that. I want everybody here, and I don't want hate speech as a result of that. And when you spread hate speech there, they have every right to then remove you from that property. And legally speaking, in the US, you now are legally obliged to leave. The law, not only is the law not defending your right to free speech, it's also simultaneously saying that, look, you have to now leave this premises. If they say leave, you have to leave legally. If you stay after being asked to leave, you're not trespassing. You can get arrested for that and get jail time for that. And if you try to, air quotes, defend yourself in any way after being told to leave a property, you have no legal basis to defend yourself because you're now trespassing. And in a lot of places in America, they're legally allowed to shoot you for continuing to stay there after you've been told to leave. So when we look at the legal premise for freedom of speech, yes, you legally do have the right to say whatever you want, wherever you want, whenever you want, and that still is true. However, if you go to a private premises, a private property, and they say we don't want certain things to be said here, and then you say those things while on the private property, the owner of that property has every legal right, regardless of your right to free speech, to remove you from that premises. That's the law. And that seems to be just the thing that a lot of people are forgetting. Trying to enforce freedom of speech on private property makes no sense, because that private property isn't owned by the government, so therefore the government's laws saying it's okay to say what you want when you want don't apply in that situation, because you're on private land and they've got their own rules. Yes, their rules still have to abide with the law in general, so they can't say you can legally do something there that's illegal by the government. So if the government, like for example drug laws, you're not allowed to have drugs, and you go into the private property says yes, it's okay to have drugs here, and you go in there with drugs, then the police come in and catch you with drugs, you're still going to get arrested even though that business said it was okay to do that there, because they can't go around the law. However, with a law like freedom, the right to free speech, as long as again, while there's a legal precedent saying you're allowed to say what you want whenever you want, there's also a legal precedent saying that private businesses are able to set their own policies regarding this. And as a result, they're not violating the law by limiting what you can say on their private premises, because there's a legal precedent saying that it's okay for them to do that, because the only people who have to respect the right to freedom of speech is the government. So if you go in to a private establishment and they say, yep, you can speak freely, hate crime, everything's permitted, better yet, let's make it a bit more extreme. You go to a private property, the rules are no hate speech, but you're sat in a quiet corner with a friend and you're talking about hate speech, but you're doing it privately, you're not bothering anyone, and no one's really noticed. And when the police were to come in, overhear what you were saying, they're not going to arrest you just because that business has said we're restricting speech. The police will just leave you to it because you have a legal right to say what you want. But if the people who own the business hear you and they say we're enacting our policy of no hate speech, we want you to leave, there's a legal precedent saying that they have every right to do that. The police will then not arrest you for what you've said, but they will, however, arrest you if you continue to stay on the private premises after being asked to leave. And that's what's important. This idea of freedom of speech is a law. It's legal. And the same law that says you have the right to free speech, the same legal system also says people with private properties are allowed to ask you to leave. For whatever, they don't even need a reason. If someone wants you to leave their property, they have the legal right to ask you to leave, no matter what the circumstances are. And if you refuse to leave, you become the one who's breaking the law. Even if they're kicking you out because you exercise your right to free speech and they say, I don't care, I don't want that here, get out, the legal backing is still on them because they've asked you to leave their property. You can leave their property, go out into public property and continue to say anything you want. Fine, as long as you've left that private property, then you're still within your legal rights to continue talking. But the important thing is that when you're on private property, the people who own that property, whether it's a physical place or a website, a platform, if they say we don't want these things here and we will kick you off if you do those things, then you do those things and they kick you off. The legal backing is with them. And I think this is what people are fighting without realizing what it is that they're fighting for. Because the same people who are saying, I want to be able to say whatever I want, whenever I want, however I want, are the same people saying, but these people shouldn't be allowed to set their own rules on their own private property. And if you take away that rule for them, the rule's taken away from you, first of all. And obviously, when you look at it from that perspective, it becomes a really strange argument to be making. You're effectively saying, my right to say whatever I want on your platform should trump your right as owning this platform to have some say in what's on your platform. And this is now where we get into that conversation where, about the reason people want this is because, as we see, they might hold opinions, politically or just societally, culturally, hold certain opinions that might be deemed, I don't want to say controversial, because controversial is not necessarily the problem, but they hold views that might be, considered hate crimes under whatever policy is set by the website, or they might be considered harassment if it's targeting a certain person, or whatever other situation comes in where they've said, look, we don't want that here. And again, when people are running businesses from these platforms, people are relying on these platforms to broaden their reach and reach certain people, the last thing they want is to be removed from that platform. And the problem is, the platforms that dominate, there's only a handful of them that have these kinds of numbers on them, and that's Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and and things like Triller, I think, Twitch TV. These platforms, there's only so many of them, all doing their own different thing, that dominate the market and have the numbers on there that a celebrity, a politician, a business can kind of manage their business and interact with their fan base in big enough numbers and draw those people in to be able to make sales and make a profit and run their businesses. So when there's only so many platforms to be on where you can do those things, and then you get removed from one or two of those platforms, now your options to sort of market yourself, interact with your fan base, and run your career are limited. And because these sites are the dominating sites, yes, you can go to alternatives, but you're not going to see the same numbers on there that you were seeing on, and I didn't mention Reddit, but I'm looking at Reddit because that's another big one. But yeah, you basically, the more you get removed from certain websites, the less you are able to grow your business in this online world. Getting banned from TikTok, getting banned from YouTube, getting banned from Twitter, those can literally end careers. Some people's whole career is based on being on those sites, and Twitch is another one. If a Twitch streamer who's making their income doing Twitch streams gets removed from that platform, they really don't have anywhere else they can go other than, say, YouTube. But the same thing that gets you banned from Twitch will very likely get you banned from YouTube, because the policies they have in place generally are quite broad and cover quite a lot of topics. So if this streamer then moves to YouTube, gets banned from YouTube, well, guess what? They now basically don't have a career anymore, because everyone who, the main bulk of their audience was coming from the popularity of a site like Twitch. And yes, some of their followers might follow them elsewhere if they can find somewhere else that offers the same quality content. But again, matching the sort of the quality and just the general reach of something like Twitch is no easy task. So let me take a sip of my drink. So again, it's in these people's and in a lot of people who are running their businesses, especially online. But this also includes offline businesses too, because as we know, the internet is a dominating force right now, and most products are being sold online. Even if they have a physical store too, you can still go find a website, and the sales are coming from online sales. So again, getting banned from these platforms can be very devastating and potentially career-ending. And it's in everyone's best interest to not get banned from these sites if you are trying to run a serious career like online, or using online to support your career. So I think a lot of people are just generally scared. They know they're holding opinions that fall into the policies that are not allowed. And as we've seen now, to kind of start bringing this back, we've seen that because of these rules and because of the stuff that we've seen happening on social media, because we've also got to talk about cancel culture, because that's the other side to this, because it's all well and good saying that the platform will remove you, but when we're talking about cancel culture, what we're really talking about is not only is the website deplatforming people, but users of these sites, consumers of this content, people watching this stuff, they also can go to a person's page and really harm someone's career there too, through their posting, making things trend, and just spreading information that a person who's running a career might not want to be spread around. And that's what we're calling cancel culture, but we'll come back to that because that's a little bit different. But yeah, again, this idea that you need these platforms if you're running a business online. There's only so many to choose from doing the things that they do as well as they do, and they also have the numbers to support and bring people certain levels of success. But to get to the point now, again, what I was going on to say is that we saw what happened here with Twitter, where a person who obviously had the capital was looking at the stuff happening on Twitter and basically said, I don't like how this really big website, Twitter, that has so much influence, is running their policies. I think they're too strict, they're restricting too many people, and people that person clearly held in a certain regard had been removed from this platform, and they didn't like the reasons they were removed, and they wanted these people to have a platform where they can say things that maybe they're not allowed to say under Twitter's form of policy. So he made the decision to, I don't like the way this is run. As a private entity, I have the capital. I'm going to buy this private entity and change the rules to match what he personally thought was more fair or was better for the website, and thus went and did that. And I think that's an example of someone who actually understands the difference between freedom of speech as a law and freedom of speech in terms of enforcing it on private companies. And he's obviously realised there is a distinction there, and he's actually gone and bought one of these platforms in order to change these policies that he doesn't agree with. So obviously that's someone who's figured out the way you solve this problem is, okay, I need to take control of one of these websites so that I can then get around these rules. And we'll see how that plays out. As we can see, Twitter is no longer going to enforce the COVID-19 misleading information policy. Effectively a policy stating that you can't post misinformation about COVID, and then the way things were being selected as misinformation, they have fact checkers on their site, people whose job it was to go and post, basically Google stuff and post the official word and say if it doesn't match what these scientists are saying over here, then we don't want it on our website. And again, it's a policy that Twitter enforced privately through their own decision, and it's now a decision that Twitter, now that it's owned differently, has now as a private entity saying we're taking that rule back. And this is the kind of thing that if you want to see this freedom of speech transferred onto a website, then what you're really saying is we want people to own these websites that are not afraid of having people say certain things on there. And so that's credit to Elon Musk. He saw a problem and he's used his position to address a problem, understanding what the problem is that he wants addressing. Because again, going to a private establishment and legally demanding that person has to let you do anything you want on their property is then a violation of their legal rights. And you've got to think, how does that law come back and bite me? And this is what we saw with Elon Musk. It was really interesting to me, but very early into his sort of takeover of Twitter, there was a number of accounts popping up after he set some new policies that were parody accounts, and a lot of those accounts were parodies of him. And what we saw was he went out and mass banned these accounts that were parodying him and effectively making fun of him. And of course, this is a really interesting thing to see so early from someone who bought this website with the intention of making it wide open for people to say anything they want, however they want, so on and so forth, hence this freedom of speech stuff. And it's really interesting that his first move was to limit the freedom of speech to some people who happen to be poking fun at him. And this is what I was saying in a previous episode, just this idea of, rules for me and not for thee, right? We've heard it a million times. Or rules for thee, not for me, that way. And that's what's happened. He was like, looking at his website, people I like, people I agree with are getting limited. So if I buy it, then I can have the people I like say what they want. But as soon as someone was saying something he didn't like from people he didn't like, he then was very quick to enact those same policies that he was saying were violations of people's freedom to say what they want. So it's really interesting. It's understandable why anybody would make that decision. No one wants to be parodied, no one wants to be made fun of, especially so early into such a big move, and you're worrying about advertisers, you're worrying about how the long term, you don't want people immediately on there kind of trouncing you. So it's understandable why that decision would be made. However, it is really interesting to see a website loosening its policies, allowing for this freedom of speech, but then simultaneously removing that freedom as soon as they were kind of the butt of the joke, right? So it'll be interesting to see how it develops. I think a lot of people are kind of predicting that rather than getting a true freedom of speech, what you're going to get is just the opening up for some more far-right ideas to be spread. They're talking a lot about how basically Twitter, which was predominantly a left-leaning company, was limiting limiting the speech of the right, the far right, and the alt-right. So now what you're going to be seeing is the rules lax for the conservative side, but then being probably, I predict, more heavily enforced for the other side. And that's what we saw with some of these parody accounts, and the kind of people getting banned were people who identify as left or liberal. They were poking fun at Elon Musk, and they did break whatever parody rule or whatever, and as a result got banned. And I think that's more likely that's what people are expecting. I think that's what they're really trying to say with this decision. And I think Elon Musk immediately banning some people exercising their right to free speech or whatever they've been talking about is just a sign that that wasn't really the intention. He just wanted to change the political leaning of the website. But we'll see what happens. It's supposed to be open for all, so hopefully we see a more balanced conversation instead of it flipping one way or the other. Only time will tell. I know Elon Musk has said previously he'd always voted Democrat and only recently switched to Republican, so he might not be the most hardcore of conservatives. I really wouldn't know. He says a lot of stuff. I think he tries to keep it quite open and neutral, while also he has picked an affiliation for the present moment. And yeah, it'll just be interesting because, again, I think when people are talking about this idea of you have free speech, they're forgetting that at the end of the day, these platforms that people are getting deplatformed from are private entities, are private establishments, are private platforms, and they are allowed, with legal backing, to enforce whatever rules or policies they would like to. And it's nice to say, remove all agenda from these big websites because they are so big. We've got to remember that while they're big, scary corporate entities now, they still have those humble roots of these were businesses owned by someone that has grown that business, and this is their private establishment to do what they want with. And if they want to limit certain speech, if they want to enforce certain rules, legally speaking, just like you have the right to free speech wherever you go and you can't be arrested for it, they also have the right to set these policies and enforce these rules. And trying to change that, because again, if you force an establishment, if you force the establishments privately owned to say, they legally have to abide with whatever you want, what that means in reverse is that people can come to your establishment and your business and do the same, and you would have no legal backing to remove those people from your premises. So you've got to remember that these things swing back around and affect you too. And opening up the right to free speech, just as we saw with Elon Musk, opens the door for people to target you with their free speech. And as we've already seen, he was very quick to shut those people up. And it's just interesting because this is what I'm kind of trying to make the point of, which is I don't think people are being either honest, or I just think a lot of people are just not entirely sure what it is they're rallying for. So again, this idea that a private establishment, a private business has to respect, let me rephrase that. To say that you don't have to respect the rules of a private establishment is legally wrong, and to legally change that would mean people can come to your house, your private property, and ignore your rules. And I'm sure you'd love that. We'd all love that, wouldn't we, if people can come to our houses and just do what they want and we have no legal backing to remove them. But fortunately, as it stands, we do have that legal backing, and I don't think we should be removing that, be it from us on ground level or from a business like Twitter. It's a privately run business. It is now owned by Elon Musk, and he's enforcing his own policies. Had the rules been different, he wouldn't have been able to do this, period. So we need to look at what it is that we actually have and realise that by going there, buying this company and changing these rules, it just shows you how these things actually work. Instead of getting mad about your right to free speech, realise that, well, actually, what I'm saying is I want the right to go to your business and break your rules. And that's a different conversation to free speech. We already have the right to say what we want, whenever we want, however we want, legally. But you don't have the right to go to a private establishment and break their rules and stay on their property once you've been asked to leave. And in some places that will get you shot. So it's important to know what we're really looking at, what we're really asking for. Yes, if a business says you can't do this here and you do it, yes, they have the legal right to remove you from that premises. No questions asked. Get the heck out, right? And to change that is to change more for yourself than you might realise, because those laws will also apply to you. And, it's just interesting seeing the way people are discussing this subject as though it's a legal issue, as though it's to do with the law, and the government should be enforcing the right to free speech on these private companies. But we have other laws saying that private companies have the right to enforce any rules they want within their own private establishment. And taking away people's rights to do that is the same difference as taking away a person's freedom to speech in general. And again, you can go wherever you want, say anything you want, and not have to worry about being arrested. Talking about freedom of speech is talking about the government arresting you for saying certain things. That doesn't happen. That isn't happening. What's happening is people are being deplatformed for breaking the rules of the platform, and they're just not happy about it. And that's a different conversation. If you don't want to be kicked out of a certain place, what do? You follow the rules of that place. If they say, I'm not going to serve you if you're not wearing a t-shirt, and you go in there without one, they have every right to say, get out, we're not serving you. Come back with a t-shirt. That's what the sign says, it's what the rules are. And yes, they have the legal backing to enforce those rules in their own private establishment. So, interesting conversation, but hopefully people will start to sort of see the light there. And then on the other side of all this freedom of speech and people getting deplatformed is this idea of cancel culture. And I think this is getting confused with the free speech comment, because people are making the argument that if a person goes on Twitter, says something that might be offensive to a group, says something that might be considered hate crime by the website's policies, what happens is not only do they get deplatformed by like Twitter, but then they also get kind of targeted by people who were offended by what they've said. And that's what this idea of cancel culture is. If you say something, anti-trans, anti-LGBT, anti-race, anti-anything, you can potentially be sort of mobbed by people online who will, do everything they can to essentially put that dent in your career, and I guess in some cases try and prevent you from having one, period. And the problem with saying that people shouldn't do that is the same thing that's running these businesses and these entities in the first place. You want people to engage with this websites that much. You want people to be doing these kinds of things because that's how people are making money. Because if people kept their mouths shut and maybe stood back when certain things were happening, you would have much less engagement on these websites, because people will be going on there and saying whatever it is they want to say. And the only time people don't like this is when they're obviously being called out for something they may have said or may have done, that the people in whoever these people, whether they're left-leaning, whether they're right-leaning, whether they're this, that, it doesn't matter. What's happened is this group of people have now turned to that entity and said, oh, you're wrong for that, and we're all going to come here and call you out for it. And it's the same thing as when everyone rushes to an album drop and they get 300,000 likes and shares. When someone says something vile and people are talking about what they've said, and that gets 300,000 likes, it's the same machine, it's the same thing that runs these entities on these social media sites in the first place. And by saying that people can't do those things, you're essentially saying they can't do them on the other side, and that's going to hurt people's businesses. That's going to hurt the website, first of all. Second of all, who are we as individuals, as business owners, as whoever we are, to police the masses, right? We don't get to tell the masses what they do or don't do unless they're on our private property. But if you have a page on Twitter, that page isn't your private property, it's Twitter's property, and you're essentially renting space on their website, right? And again, it's House's rules. If Twitter, if what these people are saying and what they're doing isn't violating the Twitter policy, then there's nothing anyone can say or do to argue with that. And if people decide to target an individual, an entity, a business because they've done something largely controversial that's being looked at a certain way, as far as freedom of speech and as far as people's access to these platforms go, they're doing everything that they have every right to do, which is to criticize. Just like you can go onto YouTube, you can type anything in the comment box. You can type something positive, or you can type something critical, or you can go type some nonsense, or you can go type a meme. You can put anything you want there. And when someone does something negative, people go to their page and post their criticisms of what they've done. And even though people are labeling this cancel culture because people are having career-damaging things happen to them, at the end of the day, it's a consequence of that person's actions. When you're dealing with such large numbers of people, you're dealing with such a fluid society where a lot of our culture has become online, and that culture changes often and things happen, people live stream and things change. You have to be ready for the fact that, look, I'm here to entertain these people, or I'm here to sell my business to these people, whatever it is that you're offering. And at the end of the day, if I can't get mad when I do something that the masses of people don't agree with, and I can't blame the website, I can't blame the law, I can only blame myself for saying something that has gotten me into this situation. And I think that's, again, the part of cancel culture that people don't want to be don't want to be honest about. If a person goes on Twitter and says something racist, first of all, legally, yes, they have the right to do that. If they're, if they're in the US, they have the right to say that, but Twitter has the right to deplatform them for saying it. But let's go into an alternate reality for a second. Let's say you were allowed to say racist stuff on Twitter with no consequence. Just because you can go on there and say those things doesn't mean you have any entitlement for anybody to agree with you. And that's the part that, again, people are struggling with. You go in there, you say something controversial, and people don't agree in big enough numbers, go on there and kick off. They have every right to go in there and not agree with you. And getting upset, getting sulky, pissy about it because the people didn't agree with something you said, that's only a criticism on yourself and your business for making that mistake, right? At the end of the day, with the way this culture works and with the way the internet works, things come and go in trends, and you might go on there one day, get really popular for a while, and then find out after a month or two people have forgotten about you and you're no longer getting those views. You can blame a million things in the world, but when you really look at it realistically, it always comes down to you. For you, you need to make the changes that will bring people back to your page, right? And it's the same thing with cancel culture. If people are flocking to you saying, I'm pissed that you said this particular thing, then maybe you didn't realise, that's on you for not calculating where your word was reaching to have that kind of backlash. It's all well and good saying I have my little circle of people here and I say what I want to them. You still might be influencing a group over there that you didn't even know existed until you say something that they've caught onto and have come for you. And that's just, at the end of the day, just because you're only interacting with a certain circle of people doesn't mean there isn't a bigger group that they're attached to. And we can pretend that's the case. We can pretend that safe spaces are, have a standard. They're not. Safe places are private establishments, and Twitter is a private establishment, but it's not yours just because you have a page on there. And again, it's on you to manage your business in a way that if you say certain things, it doesn't spread or reach the kind of people who are going to come back to you and tell you off for it. So the conversation about cancel culture and free speech, first of all, it all seems really disingenuous to me anyway. I think a lot of the people who are calling for this are calling for something else and they're just masking it. I think that's obvious, but it still needs to be said, and we still need to remember that when people are using these terms and these buzzwords, that it's just not how anything works. Freedom of speech as a law doesn't apply to a private establishment because there's other laws that tell that establishment what they can and can't do, and limiting what people say in their establishment is within their rights. So the whole conversation becomes redundant. Yes, as it turns out, legally, Twitter is allowed to stop you from saying certain things. Facebook is allowed to stop you from saying certain things, and they're effectively allowed to do whatever they want as long as they themselves don't break the law. And telling you can't say certain things on their property isn't a violation of the law. It just simply isn't. They don't want you there anymore, regardless of the reason. They're allowed to remove you from the premises. That's the other thing. Twitter doesn't have to give you a reason for banning you from it. They can just ban people indiscriminately if they feel like it. It just so happens that they do have a policy and they enforce it the way they enforce it, regardless of who owns it. And that's what the people with the parody stuff felt. That's what a lot of other people will be feeling in the future, I'm sure. But yeah, this idea that cancel culture is a scourge is ridiculous. If your word reaches people who don't like what you've said, that's on you for mismanaging your business and not realizing you were reaching those people. And if Twitter removes you from its platform, if Facebook removes you from its platform, they have every legal right to do so for whatever reason they feel like. And if it was a physical establishment and you refuse to leave, in a lot of places in the world, they would have the right to start firing at you. So you probably should get out of there because they are the ones who have the legal backing. So it's an interesting conversation. It's really bizarre. Like I say, I think a lot of it is just masking what they're really wanting. But that's where I raise the question of, but if you bring those things in, how is that going to come back around and affect you? If you say I can go to this business and do what I want, that also means they can go to yours and do what they want. And you have no legal backing to stop them. So it affects everybody. It's not just going to affect the side you It's not just going to affect the side you disagree with. It's going to affect everybody, plain and simple. Now, just to add on to that, there's another thing people are saying, which is that only conservatives, only Republicans seem to be getting targeted. by this kind of thing. But again, you've got to be a bit more logical than that. Why are we seeing more conservatives getting removed from these platforms and not liberals? Well, because the chances of to put it simply, because the liberals are not going on there and saying the N-word, right? If a liberal influencer went on there right now and tweeted the N-word, tweeted something racist, they would be deplatformed and cancelled. The reason we're seeing more conservatives get cancelled is simply because more conservatives are going on there and saying this stuff. Liberals are not going on there and saying any of this, so they're not getting cancelled. They would get cancelled the same as anybody else if they did in fact go on there and do these things. That isn't to say that the left and the liberals are some kind of flawless angels that never do any wrong. It's just simply saying that they don't go on Twitter in as big as numbers as the conservatives do and say policy-defying things. And that's all there is to it. Make of that what you want. That is the truth of it. That's why you see more conservatives banned. It's not that they're being targeted. It's because they're going on there and saying the N-word, and Twitter says you're not allowed to say that, and liberals are not going on there and doing that. So again, if you want to build your business on a platform, it's literally up to you to read the terms of that platform and understand them and operate within those terms, because it's not your platform. You just have space on there. You've rented a page on there, and that's all there is to it. The laws are still made by the company that owns the whole website that you're just a part of, and they dictate what you can and can't say, and it's up to you as an entity on there to read those rules and follow them. So that's why we're seeing what looks like a certain bias. Now, if I'm now to open it up a bit more, yes, at the same time that they can set policies and limit what people are saying, yes, it's entirely plausible, possible, and likely that they also set policies that favour their own personal political views. And again, the problem is people are obviously calling these companies out and saying, well, you're non-biased, you're the media. Kanye West is looking at Instagram and Twitter and saying you're the media, but you're not neutral, you're not unbiased. You're picking a side and you're enforcing rules that seem to favour a certain side. And again, it's just important to remember that Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, as entities, have every legal right to do that. Yes, they might enforce policies that are biased, but at the end of the day, just because you're calling them the media, just because they're labelled social media, doesn't mean they're held to the same rules as the press. Because the press and a social media site are two very different things. The press use social media to spread the news, but the social media site itself isn't a news agency. It's a social media site. And there was never anything in place saying that Twitter had to be unbiased. They probably try to be as unbiased as they feel makes sense. But another thing that people have to remember is that it's not just Twitter, it's not just YouTube, it's not just Google deciding what's right to say and what's wrong to say. Because as we already know, a large amount of their decision making and their policy making actually comes down to what advertisers are comfortable with. And many times advertisers have come out and said, we don't want our ads on this type of content. It's bad for our business, it hurts our sales, and we want to use your website because it has reach, but we don't want to use your website and pay you this money to advertise on there if your website has content that we feel negatively affects our business, which isn't an online business for the most part. That's not true because a lot of ads are online, but I mean, when we're talking about these bigger companies, their origins are not in the internet. Their origins are long established businesses such as McDonald's, such as Nike, Adidas, etc. Their companies have been physical places long before the internet was around in a lot of cases. And, they're coming in and saying, we want to engage with your website. We want to bring our massive global household product to your website and pay you that kind of money. But we're not going to do that if your website has certain content on it. And Twitter then goes, well, I really want that money, so I'm going to set my policy that ensures that people can't post that type of content and ruin our revenue as our business. And that's what people have got to remember. These are not government agencies. These are not government. Right. If you had a government-run social media page, it would legally have to match the laws. So if the law says you have the right to say anything you want, then in that government social media page, legally they would have to say you can say anything you want. They could still set policies, I'm sure, by having it as some wing with some certain rules and some legislation here and there. I'm sure they could do that, but realistically, if the government were to open its own social media page right now, they would have to allow freedom of speech on there. Something that people are not talking about. Maybe that's the option you're looking for. A government-run site that actually just follows the laws and doesn't set any other policies. Yeah. But again, Twitter, Reddit, Facebook, YouTube, Google, all of these websites, all of these businesses are independent private businesses, and they're not run by the government, even if they have interactions with and work with the government on occasions. And as we know, government agents, politicians, etc., use these websites to interact with with the people, because that's where the people are, right? So again, Twitter, Facebook, Google, etc. are always going to make decisions that benefit their business. They're not going to make decisions that harm their business and harm their profits, when the reason they're running a business is to support themselves. Not every company is profit hungry. There are definitely companies that are just trying to make good money, but also they care about their service and they care about what they're providing for the people. And then there are other companies that don't care as much about the product and the people, as long as they're getting their maximum amount of income, and that's their primary focus. At the end of the day, a business is a business. If they have an opportunity to increase their business, make certain amounts of money so they can hire certain staff and do certain things, then they need to make sure that their platform is able to support the people offering the money. So again, it's bigger companies, Nike, McDonald's, I don't really know that many of them. I should know more because they're household names, Coca-Cola, beer companies, all these different companies that have been established for in the history of the country are coming to this new platform and saying, we're not going to put our stuff on there and we're not going to give you this money if you push these certain ideas. And now people can argue a scary side of that, because then it's kind of like saying, well, actually, the people controlling the policies of these websites are these businesses, are these companies, are things like McDonald's and Coca-Cola. They're the ones setting Twitter's policy, because Twitter's changing its policy and YouTube's changing its policy, and everything, every website, major website are matching their policies to what these advertisers are willing to put their brand onto. But the same people who hate that, the same people who are speaking out against that, are capitalists themselves. So surely they should understand that, well, this is business, this is capitalism. This is the natural evolution for such big platforms. If you have a platform with millions and millions of users, and someone says, I want my product in front of those people, how much can I offer you? We're capitalists, and we're not going to say no to the income. We're not going to turn that down. We're not socialists. We're not just going to offer the website without making a profit, without making money, and let people do what they want and not have it, not run a business as a business. No, but we're capitalists. We're going to run that business as a business and make money from it, while also trying to maintain our vision for it. And like I said, not every company and not every owner of every company has that vision. They just have a product that's working, it's selling, and they just want to make as much as they can from it, and they might not put any of their personality into their policy. Their whole policy might be written purely for business interests and nothing else. And again, we're capitalists. We can't fault them for that, because that's just that's like a fundamental capitalist decision, right? We're trying to make money. So yeah, the people, people speaking out against these policies are the same people who are saying people should go out there. These are the same people saying, I'm upset because I can't run my business anymore on this platform, while also telling this platform that they can't set policies that get them their business and make them their money and allow them to even have a platform, right? And these platforms thrive through updating, staying up to date, making sure they've got the right features. All of these things cost money. So we can't expect a company like Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Google to run for nothing, because they need an income to support the growth of their website, upgrade servers, and just all the things that you need to have a big multi-million user website, right? Hundreds of millions of hits a day kind of numbers, right? You need the infrastructure to support that, which costs money. And our social media page isn't going to make money by itself. It needs something in place to generate an income, as we see with Elon Musk and his situation. that he's brought in a policy where people pay a monthly subscription, giving Twitter an increased income that way. And then obviously we have advertisements, that's the other way. So, bring this conversation back now, we can argue that Elon Musk is making this decision to charge people for a subscription, preemptively planning for the drop in advertisement revenue, because another headline coming from Twitter is that they're losing advertisers, and the advertisers are basically sitting back watching the website to decide if they're okay with their content appearing there, with what the future of this website might look like, especially with all these banned accounts coming back and all this opening up of speech. McDonald's probably doesn't want their ad showing next to someone dropping M-bombs, right? It's just going to hurt their sales and hurt their reputation. So a lot of these companies have stepped back and are saying we're going to wait and see what happens before we consider putting our money back into it. So I think bringing in this subscription service is a way for the people using the site to kind of replace some of the ad revenue, I would imagine. And again, that's probably preemptive, knowing the advertisers would back out, knowing there are advertisers that won't go near anything like this, especially when they're based. For example, a UK company where we have hate laws doesn't want to be on a site that violates our laws, right? It's not a good look. And they're not going to violate our laws on these websites, even if this is an American website. A UK company is not going to break British law on there, even though the website's based in another country. So these are the things to consider. And again, a business making money is important, and to tell these businesses that they shouldn't set certain policy because it makes you unhappy and it affects your business, while telling them to affect their business to allow you to have yours on their site, is a little bit ridiculous, right? So again, it's a really interesting conversation to see. I think people are lying about what they want, what they really want, and I think in a large way a lot of people just want this on both sides too. I think we'd all love to be able to basically go anywhere and stop people from saying things we personally don't like. I think that's what we're really talking about. It's not that we want freedom of speech, because we have that. We want to be able to go to another entity and say to them, no, I want things this way, even though this is your business. I want to be able to say this, even though you've said I can't. And we want to go to people's houses and say, you can't say that, but I can say this. You can't criticize me, you can't make a parody of me, but I can now go on there and make a parody of you, right? That's the dream, really. People don't want free speech. They don't want it to be open, because that affects them. They don't want people coming to their house and telling them what they can and can't say, and they don't want people coming to their house and saying things they don't like. But they also want to be able to go to other people's houses saying whatever they want without being challenged and without having to worry about any retribution, while still obviously trying to limit what other people are saying. So I think that's what they're really looking for. The conversation about what free speech is and how policy and business works should be trivial for a lot of the people in this sphere. It's interesting that it's not, or it seemingly isn't. It's interesting that people are looking at it in this other way, because it really is obvious. And I think engaging people with their deception and taking it at face value is an insult to ourselves. Instead of arguing with them, instead of trying to debate them on their level, we need to just simply remind them private establishments have every right to set whatever policies they want, and leave it there. We shouldn't need to say anything else, because they should understand that as capitalists. They should understand that as business owners. No one can come to your business and tell you how to run it. And I think that's what it really boils down to. And congratulations to Elon for taking such a drastic move to change something in the policies that he didn't like. And he's obviously realised, all right, I don't have the legal backing unless I own this website, so I'm going to buy it, take legal ownership, and then I can set whatever rules I want that I think's better for people, realising that this isn't something to do with the government, this isn't anything to do with the law in that way. This is actually something to do with owning a private establishment, like owning a bar. If I open up a bar and people come in and I say, yep, hate speech is free here, do whatever you want, that's up to me, right? If the police come in and catch them, that's different, especially if they're breaking the law. But in terms of the rules, like I want you to wear a shirt, I want you to dress a certain way, or I'll refuse to let you in if you don't, I have every right to enforce that, and you can't come to my business and tell me I'm wrong. I mean, you can come outside my business on the public property and tell me I'm wrong, and that's what protests are, but you can't come inside my building and trespass and tell me what's what if I don't want you there. And that's what it's all about, and that's the kind of rules. Those are the rules we do want. And if we start taking away other people's rights to refuse the service, it also removes our right to remove service to others. And this is where now we get onto the other side of this whole conversation, which is obviously the Kanye West situation. Another advocate for free speech, thinking he can go say anything he wants and it won't affect him and it shouldn't affect his business. Again, not realizing that he's going to people's private businesses and saying these things, which is the real problem. Not so much what he's saying, it's more the fact that he's going to places where, first of all, you're not supposed to say that stuff, but then if you are allowed to say it, he's also then expecting cancel culture stuff, the people to be okay with it. And this is the complete other side to free speech in general. Yeah, it's all well and good, you have the right to go anywhere and say anything, but people have the right to disagree with you. People have a right to be offended too. Yeah, you have the right to say it, but now there are consequences to what you say. We're all adults. We all know there's consequences to what we say. If you go to your workplace and insult your boss, your manager, you're likely going to find yourself in trouble and potentially removed from the company. And your boss and managers and whoever have the right to do that. So yeah, you have the right to go in there and say that stuff, but as you know, realistically, you'll most probably lose your job over it. Rightfully so, because there's policy in place to not insult and harass other people in the workplace, and that's what that would fall under, harassment. You're trying to, because this is the thing, hate speech is something that people struggle with, and well, why is this hate speech? Why can't I say that? What's wrong with saying that? And for me, hate speech boils down really simply, logically, and I'm sure many people already get this and understand this. Hate speech is essentially saying something inflammatory that's likely to incite some kind of strong feelings of resentment, hatred, anger, and essentially another way of looking at it is it's speech that's likely to incite violence from another person. Now that's not a legal definition, because at the end of the day you could say anything and incite a violent reaction from somebody. However, for example, in the UK, we've obviously identified, well, actually, there are some things that, when said more often, get this reaction than other things. Saying, oh, I like sausages, I like to eat bacon, isn't going to get it isn't going to get people to be inspired to violence. But saying, oh, I hate XYZ people is likely to get that kind of reaction based on historical legal precedents, right? The law has seen enough times that when people have gone into a place and started talking like this, it's resulted in altercations, people getting hurt, and people getting locked up. And they've just legally decided that if you even say these things, you're just going to get locked up because you're just a public nuisance, because the stuff you're saying is regarded as inflammatory enough to be considered what we're calling hate speech. So again, that's not the legal definition, it's just an understanding of it, but that's how I personally understand our UK hate speech laws to work. Going to a place and saying something to anybody, regardless of their race, whether they're white, black, of Asian descent, Hispanic, it doesn't matter, going up to any of those groups and saying anything inflammatory that discriminate, because that's another part of hate, is discriminatory, which is picking a person out and excluding them for some kind of physical characteristic, such as their gender, their race, and obviously religion's also a part of it, because of the way they might be dressed and stuff. It's another thing that a person can be discriminated against because of that thing. And again, it's important to note that these all come from historical legal precedents. So it's things that historically and legally have popped up enough times for there to be a need for laws against these things to preserve public peace and lower the crime rate and essentially stop people from getting into pointless altercations over discrimination. The threat of getting arrested for saying hate speech in this country, for the most part, it works. Yes, people behind closed doors in the privacy of their homes, away from the public, first of all, can say anything they want, and second of all, do. And there's definitely racists here, there's definitely xenophobes, nationalists, misogynists, all those, TERFs. This country has those kinds of people here too, but they're not in the streets kind of causing a ruckus either. Because again, when your speech is inciting violence, that's very closely akin to what we would call terrorism. Terrorists are typically politically motivated, but it's still a form of it because you're spreading potential violence with your speech, and that's part of it, is inciting violence with the stuff you're saying. So to understand why hate speech is what they are and why they're in place, essentially they're trying to stop bar fights from happening, because historically and legally, saying certain things in certain places lead to altercations, and that altercation affects more people because you got people needing to get, first of all, arrested. There needs to be an investigation, potential medical services, people get sued, and there's just a whole thing that happens as a result of this speech that can be avoided if you just prohibit people from saying certain things. And hate it or love it, it is there for a legal reason, and our hate crimes do coincide with these private companies. With their hate crime policies, it's the same thing. Don't go on there and drop the N-word. Don't go on there and say inflammatory things. Don't incite violence. Don't call for terror attacks. Don't use the site to spread hatred and violence and crime, essentially. And that's what the law's supposed to do. And in America, instead of having it done by the government has obviously looked and said, well, private companies, private establishments are capable of setting these rules and enforcing them themselves, and they have legal backing to do so. And if you're asked to leave a premises, you then leave, right? It's not complicated. It's a really, really simple premise. So obviously what we're seeing with the Kanye West situation is this idea of free speech. I don't want to say going wrong or going too far, but just this idea that it's one thing to say whatever you want, wherever you want. It's another thing to expect people to be happy with what you say, and to support what you say, and to agree with what you say. And what you're seeing now with Kanye West coming out, what we're going to be seeing, what we're already starting to see, so after it's only just happened, is it's coming out that people are not happy with what Kanye West said. Yes, he had the right to his free speech. Yes, he used it to say some really inflammatory stuff. But what we're going to see is him get targeted, by this so-called cancel culture, by these platforms, and get retribution, see the consequences for saying those things. And again, anyone who argues with that is arguing with logic. He went on a platform, he said whatever he wanted to say, he had his free speech, and there's going to be backlash because of it. Oops, right? Be careful what you say. Not because there's going to be some legal thing behind it, but simply because people just don't have to like what you say. And that's another thing I think people are trying to call for without maybe realising they're saying it, which is this idea that if I post something on my page, I don't want to hear criticism of it. I want to say what I want without repercussions. I want to say misogynistic things without pissing off a certain group of people, whether that's feminist groups or whoever it might be. I want to be able to post hate speech and not have to worry about my revenue, my income, my job. And I just, the workers of the world, you tell me what workplace you've ever heard of where you can go in there and just drop hate speech, or you can just go in there and just break the rules and do whatever you want. You can't. We all have to go to work and follow the rules. If they tell us to wear a tie, we wear a tie. They say don't wear trainers, we don't wear trainers. And we do that, we comply, we show up, we follow the rules, and we leave every day because we do not want to lose our jobs. And if your job is run on a platform that will remove you for saying certain things, well then you should have done better at work and followed the rules, because now you've lost your job. And there's no one to be mad at but yourself, because it was your actions that lost you that job. Are there cases where people are maybe overblowing certain things or taking a small thing too far? Maybe that happens. But I think generally speaking, if a group of people come to you and say, I don't like that you said that, I don't support that, I'm upset with you, at the end of the day, there's nothing in place saying that those people have to like what you said or what you did. And if you've offended somebody as a result of your actions. Should they have legal power to tear you down just because you said certain things? Well, no, of course not, because legal issues are handled by the state and by the police. So if you say something that's illegal, the people don't need to tear you down, and they have no business tearing you down. They should just simply report you to the appropriate authorities and let the authorities deal with the legal violation, right? So no, the people don't have, they don't have any legal rights to destroy your career. However, they do have the legal backing to go to your page on this public website, well, on this private entity, but this public page that they can access and interact with freely on this website. They have every right to go on there and make whatever comment they want, as long as they don't violate Twitter's policy of hate speech. And saying, I don't like what you said, I think what you said is wrong, I think you're even saying, I think you're an idiot for that. Here's some points to prove why you're wrong. Here's someone else criticizing you. All of those things all fall quite happily under Twitter policy. The rules about harassment, right? The harassment looks different depending on the situation. So there are rules in place to stop like directed brigading, right? If a popular channel, it has 50k of streamers, and they say, I want you to go to so-and-so's channel and do certain things, then that would fall under the violation of the policy, because you're not allowed to do that. However, there are cases where it happens and it's a positive thing, because they might be sending viewers to a page that has less viewers just to help them out. They might be going to buy a product. People do those cross sort of channel things with their fans. But generally speaking, if you send a group of anybody to go do anything to anyone, that is a violation of policy, and we do see people getting into trouble, getting strikes and getting bans for doing that type of thing. So if a bunch of people have come to your page because someone sent them to you, in such a direct way, go and ruin this person's career, that is against policies. If, however, again, and to swing this around, if someone posts it who has a more popular page than yours, and they post something you said, and as a result of that popular page gaining you popularity but negative because the people people disagree with what you've said, that's just a consequence again of not realizing who your word reaches and how that can affect your own business. As long as they weren't sent directly to you, then that person did nothing wrong. They only spread awareness, and spreading awareness of an issue is perfectly reasonable. So yeah, there's probably cases where people were sort of falsely targeted, not falsely, but maybe the reaction the punishment didn't quite fit the deed. At the end of the day, there's no legal backing for people to have to agree with you just because you have the right to say it. And I think that's what we're going to see with Kanye West. I think this is probably a major nail in his coffin that he's been hammering into for a while. I do think this is a situation where now he's used his right to free speech to say something that he wanted to say, and now we're just going to see the consequences of saying that kind of thing on the internet, see where that gets him. And it's nobody's fault but his own. He exercised his right to free speech. He was given a platform to exercise it, to say anything he wanted. He chose what he wanted to say, and the consequences of which will now fall into his hand. We've seen Kanye West do some really strange stuff before. I think this probably really is at the top of the list of some of the more insane things that he's done. This is definitely a chart topper. And we'll see what the repercussions of what he said are. And yes, people have a right to be offended, and that's how free speech really works. You can say anything, and people might agree with you, and people might disagree with you, and that's up to them. It's not up to you. It's not even up to Twitter or Facebook. Facebook can't make people agree with you. Twitter can't make people agree with you. That's just not how it works. People will agree or disagree depending on their own personal views. So, really interesting conversation. I do think it looks a little bit weird when the lines are blurred between government freedom of speech and a private company having hate speech policies. I think people need to get a bit more real with what services they're interacting with. It can look, because another side of this is the more conspiratorial side, which is, well, who runs these companies and what's their agenda and blah, blah, blah. I think those are fair questions to ask. If people are publicly accessible, you should be doing your research into a business you're interacting with. You should know its policies, you should know its rules, you should know all these things if you're doing your research. There's nothing wrong with asking those questions, but also remember that these people are business owners and can run their business however they decide, regardless of who they are. And if we are believers in capitalism, which we are, then we have to respect those companies' rights to run their business in whatever way they see fit. And they're running for profit, they're running for advertisers, so they set policies that seem strict to people who are used to being able to say anything, but in reality, it's actually them just doing good business behind the scenes to ensure that their business is making money. And if you want to make money on their sites, you want to run your career on their sites, then you have to realize that it's their site that you're running your career out of. Just like eBay. If you go sell something on eBay, you don't keep 100% of the money because you're using someone else's business to make business, and they want a cut of what you do on their site. I don't think Twitter's asking for a cut of what you do on there, but instead their cost is that you have to follow their rules. You're in their house, follow their rules. And if I'm running a bar, it's a popular bar, all kinds of people are coming in, it's drawing a crowd, it's full of popular people, and I want certain people to come here, the people who've got the deeper pockets, and I say, right, the rules are like this, so those people feel welcome to come here, and then you break one of those rules. If I have a choice between the people I wanted to be here and you who just happens to be here, I'm going to side with myself, my rules, and the people I wanted to be here. I'm not going to side with you who's breaking my rules. I'm not going to do that. And to expect me to do that is ludicrous, because you can't compensate me for the losses to my business if I did that. Never mind what I personally agree or don't agree with. My business needs to run, and I'm not going to make a decision that harms my business because of you and your business. Take your business elsewhere. I have other business. I don't need you. You need me, but I don't need you. And people need to just realize the platforms that they're on are owned by somebody. It's their business, and they're, in a lot of cases, are just letting you use their business for your business without taking a cut. If you use Bandcamp for music, they take a cut. I think SoundCloud takes a cut. YouTube takes a cut. Twitch takes a cut. eBay takes a cut. I think Amazon takes a cut. So a lot of these websites, if you're running your business, they'd be taking a percentage of your income too. It just so happens that Facebook and Twitter and Facebook and Twitter and Instagram don't ask for a cut when they could, if depending on how the website worked, because they don't have a selling function. They can't take a percentage of sales. That's not happening, but they could find a way, just as Elon Musk has with Twitter, to ensure that they're getting a percentage of these incomes that people are making from their business. So it's just remembering that these are not government agencies, these are private businesses. Just like walking into a bar, when you walk onto Twitter, they have rules. You gotta wear a shirt, you gotta wear shoes. You break those rules, you're out, because they need their advertisers. And if you're a person like Elon Musk that wants to see changes in this department, then of course you can always own the company, start your own website, and then you can have whatever rules you want. But yes, as we all know, if you go start your own Twitter, it's probably not going to, it's going to be a long time before you see that website grow and build. And you're running your career right now on Twitter. You don't have time in your world to go build a new website just so you can then run the business you're running right now. That's not how it works. And yeah, so maybe have more respect for the platforms that are allowing you to run your careers on there, and respect their rights as private entities to have their own rules, just like you have the right in your household, in your business, to set your own rules. And you wouldn't want them rules taken from you, therefore don't try and take them from your neighbour, because if they go from your neighbour, they're going from you too. So yeah, anyway, again, there's going to be backlash for what Kanye West said. He had the right to free speech, he used it. He was given a platform. See, if he was on Twitter, he'd have been banned. If he was on Instagram, he'd have been banned. But he went onto the Alex Jones show, where Alex Jones says you can say whatever you want here, don't have to worry about getting banned, and did so. And now we're going to see what the consequences of that decision turn out to be. So interesting times we're in. People are commenting this is really the darkest timeline. Kanye West is coming out saying stuff like this. The man made Graduation after all. But not anymore. Jay-Z made it. We're going to forget about it, and we're just going to see what happens with time now. But yeah, to take you back to the headline, Twitter is no longer enforcing the misleading information policy, so people are allowed to effectively spread whatever information about COVID they want, regardless of its validity. And I'm all for it in a lot of ways. I would prefer a platform that people could say more things and speak more freely about their personal ideas. I don't think we need anyone above us policing our thoughts and what we can say. But I also don't expect a private company to necessarily care what I think when it comes to their profits. And it never bothered me that I couldn't go on Twitter and say certain things, because, again, saying those things, I can, it's just, there's other things to say. Like, I'm running a business, and if I want to run my business a certain way, there's places for me to go and run the business that way. If I want to run, when I'm using Twitter, I know I've got to work my Twitter page like a Twitter page, because Twitter has its own rules, it has its own style, and its own way of interacting with the people on there. But if I go onto another site, Facebook, YouTube, whatever, or I go onto Reddit, for example, when I go onto Reddit, I find that I can say a lot more of the stuff that I probably wouldn't say on Twitter, not just because of the policies, but also because on Twitter it's just a more free place to say things. People might not like it, and you might get the downvotes, and your post might get ignored. But I know that there's things I can go on Reddit and say and do that I can't bring to Twitter. And more importantly, I also know my business. I know that if I go to my Twitter page, which is theoretically more connected to my fan base than my Reddit account is, then I know I can say things on Twitter to deal with my business, but then I can privately go on Reddit as a user and say whatever I want on there. And I guess that's the difference between my pages for me and my pages for my business. And if I'm a celebrity or I'm a public figure of some kind, then the odds are my public pages, my verified pages, would be dedicated to me as a business or my career. And again, there are some things you just don't say as a business. If McDonald's, Coca-Cola and Nike are saying we don't want our adverts on so-and-so posts, then there's a really, really serious possibility that most of us don't want our advertisements on there either. Some of us do, and this is the point now, Twitter isn't the place for that. If you want to post things that Nike, McDonald's, etc. won't support and will advertise on, then you need to go to a website that they don't advertise on, where the rules are different. When I'm using Twitter, I know what I'm using. I know what the rules are. I know what I'm looking at. And if I go to another site that's more open, I know what I'm looking at there, such as Reddit, such as sites like 4chan. Again, if you want to say some really wild stuff, then Reddit, 4chan are the places to go. 4chan more than Reddit, because it's a lot more freer with its rules, but at least you have that space to say spicier things without having to worry about how it's going to affect your business. So, I don't know, something to think about. I know some people's business is operated through hate speech and through saying hateful things too, but again, expecting Twitter to change its rules and affect its business just so you can sort of go on there and then say those things for your career is silly. Twitter's not giving up its business for your business, unless your business is bringing more money than its own business, which, when we're talking about some of the biggest corporations in the world, is highly unlikely, right? So, yeah, respect people's rights to have their own rules on their own property, and realise that if you own Twitter, you'd have the same rights that Twitter had and Twitter has now with a new owner, and that is the right to set whatever policy that you want. But if you don't own Twitter and you're using its services, then you need to realise this is a service with rules, with ways of operating that I do need to respect if I want to work on here, if I want to work with them. Because when you go on Twitter and you put content on there, you're working with Twitter. You're actually in a partnership with them. You're bringing content to their website so more people come to it, and when more people come to their site, they can then get bigger and bigger prices for their advertising because it's worth more. So you're in a partnership with Twitter, and they're the overlords, and they're saying you've got to do it this way. If you want to make money with us from these advertisers, now Twitter, maybe not so much, but with something like YouTube, if you want to make money with us from these advertisers and get your cut for giving us content, then you need to also respect our platform and the vision we have for the kind of content on here. And that's just that. And in terms of cancel culture, the people speak. The people will always speak, and it's just easier for them to speak on certain issues now. And yes, people's careers are getting hurt, but if you say something that hurts your career, then maybe you shouldn't have said the career-hurting thing, right? It's just as simple as that. If you don't want to get arrested, don't break the law, right? And more importantly, don't get caught breaking the law. If you really want to go say some racist stuff, there are places where you can go and say that and not have to worry about getting banned. But if you bring that to a page that will ban you for it, then don't be surprised when they ban you, as they told you they would do. So, interesting stuff. Big thing going on here with this whole free speech conversation, and just let's try and remember that there is a difference between governmental free speech and private entities giving you the right to say whatever you want. There is a difference, it's a different conversation, and be careful of removing the rights of others, because if the law changes for them, guess what? It literally also changes for you. So, you take away their right to set their rules, you won't be able to set rules in your own establishment, and then you're going to have Democrats and all conservatives come to your place and say what they want, do what they want, and you won't be able to stop them. As it stands right now, you have an establishment, you have property. Someone comes there and starts saying stuff you don't like, you can kick them out. Twitter isn't your property. The page you run on Twitter isn't your property. It is the property of Twitter. And no, you can't say whatever you want on there just because you think you should, because it's not your property. But if you owned Twitter, like Elon Musk, then you can say anything you want. But the thing is, he of all people understands better than probably anybody that there's certain things he can't go on there and say. There are things that if he goes on there, says it or does it, it's not just going to affect him and his businesses, but it's going to affect thousands of people and countless other companies and businesses too. So while he's advocating for this idea of free speech, and he's obviously exercising it in his own way, even he knows there's certain things he can't say or do because there's too much writing on it. And that's him as a business understanding that, as a business entity understanding that's how it works, and that's why he's made the decision to just purchase Twitter outright and then run it how he feels fit, how he feels comfortable, because he now owns the property. But again, he's now having to deal with the issue of advertisers potentially leaving and not coming back. He's having to make sure his policies align with what advertisers will put on there, so that he's able to generate an income for the website, pay the staff, and obviously make it run profitable. So it's just, and that's just where it is. But he saw a problem, he didn't like the way it was being run, he said, I'll run it, and then I can set my own rules, and that's the right attitude to have. Don't try and change the laws to limit what businesses and private property and private entities can do in their own private land. Instead, change the policy of the website through the correct channels. And in this case, the only way to get Twitter to change was to outright buy it, which most of us can't do. And that's the reality of where it is. You have no power here. You can't ask these companies to change anything. You can't ask these businesses to change anything. You can ask them, but you can't expect them to listen. They're running a business and they're dealing with things behind the scenes, such as advertisers and whatever other promotions and other income streams and relationships with other businesses. They're dealing with all of that while you're telling them, change this rule so I can say racist stuff. It's like, but I'm making millions over here not letting people say that stuff. I have zero incentive to change it just so you can say the N-word on here. Go somewhere else and say it. And I feel like that's a really conservative attitude, but the conservatives do seem to be the loudest ones against it. But that's a conversation for another time. Anyway, Kanye West, Elon Musk, Donald Trump, big names, big people, and it's just interesting watching how the things they're doing and the effect they're having on people. I still think we can look at Elon Musk and we can even look at Donald Trump and still see positivity, but now I think with Kanye West, the line in the sand, it was already drawn because he came out as an anti-Semite and clung to it and didn't apologise. So the line was already drawn, but now he's like, a line was drawn and then he's took a shovel and dug a trench, so there's no coming back from that now. It is Kanye West, and stranger things have happened, but incredibly likely we don't see a comeback from him on this one. It's going to be spread, it's going to be memed, it's going to be all over the place. Kanye West quite literally announcing that he is a Nazi. Wild stuff, and yeah, just try to remember, people, you might have the legal freedom to say whatever you want, but there's no legal precedent saying that anybody has to agree with you. And that's what we need to start growing up and accepting. If people en masse don't agree with what you say, then maybe what you said just wasn't You just, I mean, there's a couple of reasons. You're not talking to the right people. You're reaching people who have a differing view. And maybe you've just said something that even people on both sides can't tolerate. That happens too. So what you say does have a consequence, even if you have the right to say it. And it's this childish attitude that because you have the right to say something, you also have immunity from the repercussions of saying it. You don't. There are repercussions to everything you say or do. We are adults. People are going to respond to what you say. Expecting people not to react, I don't know what kind of world you want to live in. It's not even fascism. Because even if we're talking about a fascist government, they're still not going to have a rule where they can say something and you can't. Or vice versa. It's never going to work like that. They're not going to change the fundamental rules of private entities setting their own policies. Those things are never going to change. So what exactly is it that you want? I know what a lot of people want. They want a monarchy with them as the monarch. But that's not going to happen. So then when you take away the ridiculous stuff, what does that leave you? It leaves you with, well, that's what I'm asking the people. What is it that you actually want, where there is this world where you can go to any private establishment, say anything you want, and people are forced to just agree with you because you said it? What reality is that? What world is that? More importantly, what world are you living in where you can say something and not be criticised? Because last I checked, every single thing to ever come out in the public eye is criticised by some percentage of people. There's never been a time where something's come out that's had 100% unanimous agreement. It's never happened. You can say water is wet and people will still disagree with you. You put any kind of music, any kind of album, it can be the most beautiful work of art to go down in the halls of history. You could take a Beethoven song and people will still criticise it. Just because it's regarded by a large amount of people, as in a positive light, doesn't change the fact that there's going to be people who disagree with it. And expecting people to never disagree with things you say is just beyond childish. It's not even a toddler would have that mentality. They very quickly learn that no one's listening to what they say. Everyone just ignores them, right? That's what it's like. People don't listen when you're young and you learn that lesson. So it's like, how have you grown up expecting people to suddenly not react to the things you're saying? And again, I don't know what kind of world these people think they're in where that makes any kind of sense. I should go to your pub, your bar, your private establishment, do anything I want, say whatever I want, and everyone here has to not only, tolerate it, but I expect them to like it too. And it's just like, that's not how anything works. You put something out there, the people will decide if they like it. And there's always going to be a percentage of people that don't. And we're going to see here with Kanye West that he's just said something that historically has had very poor effects on people's careers. So we'll see what happens. He's got a really huge, broad reach with his fan base, and that's one of the reasons why this is something to watch, because a lot of people are going to see this and hear this, and we're going to see the consequences of doing so. So wild times we're living in, crazy stuff going on, and just what more can you say, right? What more can you say? So we're almost done with this video. There's not much more time left. I've got a bunch of tabs open, but we're going to end the video with something off politics now, and we're just going to take a look at just a couple of Reddit posts I've picked out for their spookiness, their creepiness, their oddness. I think there's only 4 of them. Oh wait, actually, never mind, because I was supposed to talk about Liver King. So I actually probably have a whole video or a whole section that I need to spend on this subject. And this ties into everything else, because it's again an example of people making decisions that affects business, people being able to just say anything they want without consequence, and just how that can impact people's lives, and the kind of thing we're talking about when we say we have people literally running their businesses on these websites. So of course we have the Liver King story. I didn't really follow Liver King. If you met me in person, you'd understand why. But this whole macho alpha thing really isn't my flavor. I understand why people follow it. I understand why people feel like there's a need for that kind of content. I'm going to save that for a completely different video. just the whole whole alpha mentality. But what I want to talk about here is just, first of all, I'll finish my sentence. Liver King has been caught out a health freak, someone selling supplements, someone selling people a lifestyle, saying that he got himself into his physical condition through these lifestyle decisions. Sorry, so I actually just went and opened up an image of the guy so we can see what we're talking about, just in case you haven't heard of him, but you probably won't be here on this video of all things if you haven't. But yeah, this guy, Liver King, basically saying, follow this lifestyle, take these supplements, buy this stuff, and you will be able to get a physique like me. And it's come out, long story short, that actually this body isn't as natural as he was claiming. He didn't get it just from these routines and this lifestyle. He's actually been taking steroids the whole time, which is the reason he was able to sort of achieve the size he has achieved. It's a crazy story. I don't think too many people are surprised. I think anyone who's ever engaged with lifting and weight building, and anyone who knows any of the sort of science and the biology of it, knows that the body has a sort of set amount of mass it can gain naturally, and after that the only way to push and grow further is with steroids and such things, and testosterone boosters and stuff. After a certain point, you can't go the natural way, and everyone kind of has a genetic blueprint for how big they can get just naturally. And he, of course, was claiming to have gotten like this naturally, something that is considered the top 0.001% of people genetically can even get to this size without steroids. He claimed he was one of them, and as it's turned out, well, actually no, he had some help to get to these proportions. And it sucks for people who were following him. He had a big following, people were listening to him, people following his diet, thinking that if they just follow what this guy's saying, they too can achieve a physique like his, especially with him having that gruff look. He's just a regular guy. You can even picture him with a beer belly, who's worked his way to having a body like this. And yep, it sucks that someone who's like an inspirational figure is lying to people, misleading people. And for me, the real important part, and the thing that I want to sort of talk about, because another side I've heard to this Liver King story is, while he obviously did use these drugs, steroids and whatnot to achieve this physique, he still also would have to have maintained some kind of lifestyle. He still had to hit the gym, he still had to lift, he still had to follow certain diets just to sort of get this optimized look. But he did have help to grow in size. He didn't get big off of this diet, and that's what people in his community generally want. They want to get as big and as bulked out as possible. So, he did follow the lifestyle as far as people are saying, but he didn't get to this size from the lifestyle, and that's the con that is sold people. Yeah, you exercise, you eat right, you're gonna look good, your body's gonna look good, but to get to big bodybuilder sizes, yeah, as we know, a lot of the time the people with the bigger physiques didn't get there naturally, and did in fact get there with help. And even people like Arnold Schwarzenegger, however you say his name, even he, as someone who's been like a prominent public figure for so long, has come out and admitted that in his bodybuilding days he was using these drugs to get his physique as big as it was, and it's a known thing. And I think a lot of people in the bodybuilding community, there's definitely people who say natural's the only way, but then there are followers and people who do think once you get to that certain point, using these drugs is maybe not ethically right, maybe not something you should be pushing and endorsing, and you definitely shouldn't be deceiving people if you're not naturally built. But there are people who will allow that and sort of say, well, fair enough, you wanted to get bigger and that was your only option at that point. And so I'm sure he'll still have a following. I'm sure it will only affect him so much, but he did sell people a lie. He did have people chasing their own tail, because they're just not going to get a body like this following any plan, because everyone's got a pre-amount of size they can grow, and the only way to get past it and get to bigger proportions is with drugs. But anyway, more importantly, and this is the bit I wanted to focus on the most, is just simply this idea of needing supplements. Now, this Liver King guy, this character was selling supplements. He was promoting them and he was selling them, and these supplements, you know, they range from claims of enhanced brain functionality, better memory, you know, being able to grow bigger, vitality, just, you know, let me just go get our page up. And so, yeah, I just took a moment to just open up some tabs just to sort of show what these supplements are, and then sort of just make some points about what they are, how they're affecting people, and just the idea of even, you know, people flogging these supplements just anywhere, right? So the basic idea is a supplement, as they're called, is some kind of, you know, daily pill, daily, I don't know what other word there is other than pill, but it's something you take, often daily, maybe weekly, maybe monthly, that has the promised effects of boosting some part of your body's system. So we can see we've got, you know, what was that one, the blood one? Blood vitality, colostrum, there's one for the brain. I mean, you know, these are sort of named of what they are. So this is grass-fed beef adrenal. So this is obviously focused on boosting and helping the function of the adrenaline glands. This is obviously to support the thyroid gland, liver health, organs in general. And essentially these supplements are things that these influences, you know, I mean, first of all, supplements have always existed, because at the end of the day, we've always had people flogging elixirs and cures and all sorts of stuff that claim to do certain things for you. And you can go back hundreds of years and people were selling magical elixirs that can make people young again and cure health conditions. And as we know historically, a lot of the time it's just snake oil, it's just bunk, it's just some kind of regular oil that you just smear on yourself and nothing actually happens, but you look a bit shinier because you've smeared the oil on yourself. And of course, as people did back then, as we see today, people are still going out and buying these things in large numbers, and it's surprising that people still fall for this kind of thing when it is so historical. People have been trying to sell us miracle cures for years and years and years, and they never work. They're always debunked. It's always overblown. They never, you know, historically they just don't deliver what they promise, and we know that because the ones that do deliver become pharmaceuticals, right? The things that do work become prescription drugs. So we can, you know, we already know that the stuff that works is behind the counter, but then there's things that the pharmacists sell, and then there's things that they would never sell. And that's where we get into the supplement business, which is the things that pharmacists won't even sell. The only people that sell this stuff are these health gurus and these influencers telling you that if you take this, it will do all kinds of miracle things to you. So one such example I've opened up is this one. It claims to help the kidneys remove waste and extra fluid and boost the general health of your kidney. Now, first of all, I know I'm not a doctor. I know some medical stuff, but I know my science. I know enough biology and enough chemistry, and I know enough biology to know that the kidneys remove waste by themselves without any additional help. As a naturopath, assuming a person is of a normal, healthy weight, is eating a fairly balanced diet, and is drinking, you know, water, then their kidneys will just function perfectly fine without any help. So immediately, this idea that you need something extra to have your kidneys work better is ridiculous. The kidneys do what they do, and they don't need help to do it. They never have. As long as you're getting a fairly balanced diet, everything you need for your kidneys to function, including water intake, is there, and your kidneys will work completely fine without any help. Now, what this stuff's claiming to do is essentially boost the kidneys. I mean, it says boost vitality. So overall, it does more. Yeah, overall kidney health. And essentially saying, buy this product for $40 and it will make your kidneys work better, or work more optimally. And you shouldn't need a doctor at this point as an adult to tell you that your kidneys operate optimally by themselves. Now, there are such things as kidney failure and kidney stones and other illnesses associated with the kidney, but as we know, a lot of these things are generally caused because there's problems in a person's health elsewhere. Sometimes the kidneys can just shut down too from genetic reasons, sure enough, but most of the time, or a lot of the time, the kidneys are only going to shut down through some kind of failure in the health, in the basic health, needs, some kind of problem in the basic health. I don't know what to call it. I'm trying to think of it. Like, I want to call it the triangle, but I don't know if it is a triangle. But it's just, like I said, if you're the ideal weight, you're eating a fairly balanced diet, you're drinking enough water, your kidneys will be fine. If you're not drinking enough water over a long period of time, that's when you're going to start to get things like kidney stones. Your kidneys are going to struggle more because they, all your organs need water to function. If you've got some kind of vitamin deficiency, that can start to become a problem. And again, if you're not eating a balanced enough diet, that's where you're going to see vitamin deficiencies. So just immediately, this idea that taking some extra thing that's not part of your regular diet will somehow cause your kidneys to work better or more optimally is ridiculous, and you don't need to be a doctor to understand that. So this is the kind of thing we're talking about when we're talking about snake oil. Here's this magical thing that when you take it will do something that doesn't even make sense. You can't make the kidneys operate better than they operate. They have a job to do, and they either do it or they don't. And if when you're having things like kidney stones or whatever, then something needs to be looked at in your diet to sort of say, all right, this is why your kidneys are struggling here, and if you do this and that, then you can restore the health of them and they will regenerate. But again, you don't need anything extra to a normal diet that would affect the function of your kidneys. And that's the kind of thing they're selling to people. We have the other really famous one, Alpha Brain. I can't remember if that's Joe Rogan or Alex Jones. I know one of them, or maybe both of them at some point, have promoted it. I can't remember who it is who actually sells it. It says on it, so I think that was Joe Rogan. I don't remember right now, but it doesn't really matter. It's just another one of these supplements that's being sold with a really like, what's the word, heavy claim that it's going to improve your brain's function, help with your memory and focus, and do this magical thing that your brain wouldn't do by itself with a healthy diet and lifestyle. And again, if you look at the ingredients, it's just stuff that, long story short, you're basically getting all of it just through a normal diet. It's all coming down to amino acids and vitamins, and it's all things that's just found in food. The idea that taking more of it is going to do some magical stuff to your brain is ridiculous, because you can't boost your brain, as we know. It's a false idea. The brain operates, and the way it gets better and more efficient is by making more, neurological connections. Neurons connect to more neurons and have more connections to neurons, and that's what improves brain function. And that's something that happens through brain use, not through taking some kind of supplement that's supposedly going to magically make your brain work better. It is snake oil. It always has been. When people are selling these kinds of things, you don't need them for optimal body function, because the body operates functionally, as we know through science, biology, and through medical and just the experience of medical professionals over years. We know what works, the things and chemicals and things that our body needs to take when we're having illness and whatever else. We know what works. It's a prescription drug because it works. Yeah, there's shadiness with the pharmaceutical companies, but that isn't to say that the things that are pharmaceutical drugs are the things that don't work. They are the things that do work, are tried and tested to work, and that we know this because they're prescription drugs. And Alpha Brain is not a prescription drug. It's a supplement effectively full of vitamins that you can take that will give your body those vitamins. And that's only good when the body has a deficiency, and this is the important part. For example, taking a daily multivitamin when you have a well-balanced diet and a healthy lifestyle is unnecessary. And your doctor will say you don't need to take the extra vitamins because you're getting enough from your diet. And what happens is, when you take extra of what your body needs on a daily basis, like you take a daily multivitamin when you don't need it, your body's just going to excrete the extra stuff anyway. So your body's not going to, it's not, you're putting more in, your body's not going to use more just because there's more available. The only time you need to take supplements is if you have a deficiency. Now, if you have a deficiency, for example, a big one is like vegetarians and vegans not getting B12. I don't know if B6 as well, but definitely B12, because that's a vitamin that only comes from meat. And if a person's not eating any meat protein, then they're not getting that vitamin B12, and that's where taking a B12 supplement can be beneficial as a short-term solution. The long-term solution is finding alternate foods that do contain vitamin B12, which are available. The Beyond Meats are putting these vitamins in there to make sure you're getting them. And of course, I think there are some types of beans that might contain B12. I can't remember off the top of my head, but there are ways to get that B12. It's just you've got to make sure you plan your diet to ensure you're getting that, and then just like that, you no longer need supplements because you're getting enough from your diet anyway. And that's what's important about these pills. If you are eating a healthy, balanced diet, and it doesn't have to be like perfectly balanced on the scales, it just has to be you're getting enough vegetables, getting enough protein, getting enough fiber, getting enough carbs. If you're doing that, you are getting enough of these vitamins from that diet, because each of those categories contains each of the vitamins needed. And if you're changing the vegetables you're having daily or weekly, you're changing the proteins you're taking, you're changing the fibers you're taking in, and the fats and the carbs, then you're getting enough variety to support complete, optimal, healthy bodily function. And it's just this idea that people are going to sell you some magical elixir that's going to do all these wonderful things to you, and they're selling it, of course, by saying, I take this and it works for me. I'm successful. I take this. It works for me. You should take it. And that's really the lie people are buying when they buy these supplements. And that's how the snake oil salesman works best. I think it was in Red Dead Redemption, the video game, where you help the snake oil salesman and he has you drink the elixir and then suddenly you're an amazing shot and you can shoot the hat out the air and blah, blah, blah. When you could do that stuff anywhere. And he just wanted you to make it look like drinking his elixir made you a better shot, when in reality, you already had the skills and the elixir did nothing, right? And it's the same thing, and that's why I think the important takeaway from our friend the Liver King is to realize that he was selling this lifestyle, selling these supplements, telling you they work and that he takes them and they work for him, just to find out actually the reason he looks the way he does isn't because of any of these supplements. It's not because of any particular thing. It's because he was taking steroids. Yes, he probably was following a strict diet too. Obviously, because you got to have the muscle showing, you need to have lower body fat. So you do need to regulate your diet to not have too much body fat. But we can safely conclude that the supplements weren't the reason he got big. The diet wasn't the reason he got big. He gained the size that he gained because he was taking steroids, and that's that, full stop. So everything he said about these supplements he's endorsing, throw it out the window. It's snake oil. He's telling you to buy this because it worked for him, and he's not even relying on them for himself. He's literally going out and taking steroids. So after all that, following all these rules, what's the message of the day? What, you still need steroids to get big? It's trash, and it just exposes this entire industry of supplements for what it is. It's unnecessary garbage, and at the end of the day, they're tricking you into buying this stuff. And more importantly, for those of us who don't buy this stuff, let's try to remember that the people who are buying it, the people they're preying on, are desperate people. They're preying on the person who can't gain weight naturally, and he's saying, oh, you want to bulk up like I do, well, take this supplement and you'll get there. And then in reality, he didn't even get there from the supplements. He only got there because he was on steroids. And more importantly, he was already big, muscle developed, etc., before his supplements even came out into the market. So pretending that these are something he's been taking the whole time, and then telling you he's cooked them up in a laboratory and he's already built and he's already done all this stuff and blah blah blah, just exposes, and I hope people catch this, I hope people pay attention to this, that this supplement business is snake oil. It always has been, always will be, because at the end of the day, you don't need any extra vitamins, you don't need any extra anything if you're already getting them through your diet. And all the things found in these pills, maybe with the exception of some magical chemical they've created that apparently does XYZ, which isn't tested to work, it's not pharmaceutical. If you can't get it from a chemist, if you can't get it on prescription, then the chemical that they're featuring in there is probably just bunk, right? It's not an active chemical. It's not something that does some magic thing, because they'd be using it in hospitals if that were true. They'd be prescribing this stuff in hospitals, and they don't, because it doesn't do anything. Everything else apart from that whatever their leading ingredient is stuff you just get through your diet, and that's it. Nothing else. B12, selenium, it's just stuff you get through a regular diet, and it's just insane. You know, you're getting this stuff from food. This is literally oat straw, which you can just get oat straw and put that in your food. You know, the extra vitamin you can take with a supplement, which you don't even need if you're eating meat anyway, and having more of it will do nothing except make your kidneys, and this is the other irony of it, it will just make your kidneys and your liver work harder, because it's processing more of the stuff it doesn't need. And it's just, you know, and that's not even a thing, because your body, you know, your liver will just work until it can't work anymore. But again, all taking extra vitamin when you're already getting the vitamins going to do is just make your organs work harder than they need to process something they didn't need in the first place. They are preying on desperate people who want to be like Joe Rogan and feel like they can't do it, and then they find out, well, I'm taking some miracle drug or miracle substance that allows me to do the things I do, when in reality they were never taking that stuff. They got to their positions without it, and they've only started selling it now that they're already there, and they're just selling people a lie, and it's ridiculous. It's a horrible industry. People are making a lot of money from it. And at the end of the day, another thing to say about these ingredients is, you know, you're paying $40 for this, or you can pay $2-3 for a multivitamin, right? And you're getting basically the same stuff. But more importantly, the multivitamins being sold at the chemist, because it actually contains things that, if your body does need them, will help. Whereas this stuff isn't being sold by your chemist because they don't need to sell it, because they're selling the same ingredients for $3 minus 1 or 2 bullshit miracle cures that don't have any scientific backing behind them other than their word, right? So it's a ridiculous industry, and hopefully people realise that, seeing someone like Liver King, who's flogging all these different things, get exposed and find out that actually none of this stuff was doing anything, because he was taking literal steroids anyway. So the poor desperate person who's trying to bulk up and get like him and look like him, he has that gruff image and an everyday guy kind of thing, and they're buying this stuff, trying to bulk up and get big, just to now find out, well, actually the way he got big was just by taking steroids. And to be completely honest, I don't want to advocate people to take steroids, but I can guarantee that would be a better spend of money in terms of getting towards your goals than this stuff ever will be. You know, paying $50 for this when it's going to literally do nothing is ridiculous, right? But going to your chemist, spending $3 and buying a multivitamin and taking that daily, you know for a fact that's going to have a positive effect. And all those vitamins are going to affect all your organs, including your brain and your brain function. And anyway, one thing I want to say is, if you want to see what a true miracle cure is, if you want to test this for yourself and put this to the test, I'm going to tell you one thing that you can do to see results if you're a guy, but if you're also a woman and you're a partner to a guy, or whatever the combination might be, you basically need someone who can produce sperm, and you need to have that person take nothing, don't take any other supplements, just take a daily zinc supplement. Just go to your chemist, buy a daily zinc supplement, a little tub, and it will be a couple of dollars. Take that every day for a couple of days, a week, and you can tell me yourself whether you need any of this stuff or whether you just need those vitamins. Just try it. The best way to prove this is to just do it. I'm not trying to sell you a supplement. I'm telling you, go to the chemist, pick up some zinc, take it daily, and come back in a couple of days, and you tell me what works and what doesn't. So, yeah, it's a sad industry. People are being preyed on. They're being lied to. And hopefully with this Lizard King situation... Did I say Lizard King? I meant Liver King. Hopefully with the Liver King situation... I've been playing too much Destroy All Humans. Hopefully with the Liver King situation, people will realise that they are in fact being sold snake oil and it's just a waste of your money, and you're basically buying into a fraudulent business because they're selling something that just simply doesn't work. It just doesn't do anything, and the things that it does do can be achieved by just eating normal food and taking a multivit, and you'll have not only the same effects but more efficient, because they don't have all the bunk in there. There's nothing extra for your body to process. It's just straight vitamins. Your body will do what it does with them, and that will be that. And again, if you're having a deficiency, you don't even need a multivitamin. You don't need to take a supplement if you're having a deficiency, because you can get that vitamin or that enzyme or whatever it is you're lacking. You can just get that from food alone. It's all in food, and that's why we eat food. One of the reasons we eat food is because it contains these things, and that's what our body uses to function optimally without any extra help, just regular food. But if you're struggling to get certain things in your diet, again, that vegetarian example, you might be struggling to get B12, and I think B6 is a meat one as well. If you're struggling to get vitamin B from your diet, then yeah, a supplement will help. But again, there's something you plan for in your diet anyway, and there are ways of getting that, I think, without needing to eat meat. But, you know, like, again, your body needs certain things to work and function optimally. It doesn't need anything else. And all the things that work are prescription or illegal. You want to concentrate more, there are drugs that will increase your brain function in that way. But yes, they're illegal narcotics because of the side effects of such a drug. But they work. Those are the drugs that work. There's a jerk, I can't remember who said it, it's like an old thing, but someone made the comment that if it worked, it'd be illegal or a prescription. And it's true. If it worked, if these things work, they'd be illegal or they'd be pharmaceuticals. It's that simple. It's just that simple. So anyway, you want to prove this, you want to test this theory, you want me to prove to you right now that this stuff is entirely useless and you could get the same effects for just $3, then go get some zinc. If you're capable of producing sperm and semen, take zinc, take it for a couple of days, get with your partner, and you tell me whether you need anything else in your life. And I'm just going to leave that there. But yeah, I hope people learn. I hope we step away from this supplement culture, because it's predatory and it's just fraud, and who wants to sit and have to deal with people just lying, barefaced lying to you about some product when you're going about your day on the internet, right? We don't want to see it. We don't want to see scams and frauds. We should be fighting back on that kind of thing, and we certainly shouldn't be buying into it, because otherwise it never goes away, and we'll just have bullshit artists selling us all types of nonsense till the end of time. And it looks like we probably will, because the snake oil salesman has existed from way back when, and as we can see, the career is still alive and well today. So go try my experiment, put my words to the test. Cut out all these other supplements. You don't need them, and you are being scammed. You're paying way more than the ingredients are worth. There's nothing to back them other than some doctor they've paid off or have a deal with. And as we can see in a case like the Liver King, and I guarantee, we can extrapolate to other people doing a similar thing. They are just full of shit, trying to sell you a product and get rich. It's a business. They're trying to sell their image, sell themselves, and this guy has now been caught out lying, and he's not the only one, and we know that. It's never just one. It's never ever just one who's doing this. There's a doctor who he was working with who has questions to answer, because he's also selling these supplements, putting his seal of approval on them, and we've just found out that the premise for them working is bullshit. So now what's he going to say? We'll find out in time. He's going to have to walk back a lot of what he's saying, because it was based on what Liver King was doing. It's just charlatans trying to... They've seen that the supplement industry is making a lot of money, and they wanted a part of it, and they've sold some bullshit to do that. And just don't buy it. Put your money where your mouth is. Go try the zinc thing first, and then tell me if you need all these other supplements, or if a $3 bottle of zinc or a multivitamin is enough. So think about that. And please just try to watch out for these fraudulent people. So we've covered Twitter and the whole free speech thing. We're seeing Twitter make changes to the way it's working. And, this idea that Twitter is just trying to be presenting as a level playing field, instead of it being leaning a certain way with its of its policies. If people are happy, want to leave, and this is obviously the argument that at the end of the day it's a business and they have rules, and you don't like the rules, you don't have to be there. And yeah, and then Kanye West. So anyway, we're going to end this video with something just out of the news now. We're going to look at a couple, I think there's only 4 of them, posts from Reddit. We're going to leave the headlines for today, and we're just going to look at these, give our feelings on them, get a vibe from them, and then we'll end the episode there, because it's been 2 hours now. Next episode, we'll jump into another game, and obviously we'll go back looking at the headlines, and we'll just see how some of this stuff has developed, just over the next couple of hours. So thank you for listening and sticking with me through that. On to the fun stuff. So moving on to the first post I found, it gave me I know which one this is. It gave me a nice feeling. It wasn't necessarily a spooky feeling, but it did give me like an uncanny, oh, that's odd feeling. And it is this picture, posted by user Rebuilt Awesome, and it's Grim Reaper Got a Date, and it's these 2 masked people, kissing through their masks. It's an interesting picture. I liked it because it just has a slightly uncanny feeling. Obviously, the mask, mainly this one, gives it a cult feeling. It's like it just gives you that kind of thought like this could actually be a cult member. Obviously, this mask is a bit sillier, but I just liked it. I just thought it just gave me oh, that's odd. It does look like a eyes wide shut type of deal, and I thought it was cool, so I wanted to share that. So that was a user Rebuilt Awesome. Next we have this video here, hopefully it doesn't get claimed, and basically this is, oops, I've opened it up over here. This is some kind of pond, I'm guessing somewhere like in the Arctic or maybe northern Canada or somewhere very, very cold. I don't know if it says it in the post. Well, you can see by the title, don't drown here, it will be cold and dark. And basically it's under this water. If you was to fall in, you would find that it was a lot deeper than you would expect such a small little pond to be. It almost looks like a big puddle, but in reality it's a massive chasm. It just goes dark. You don't know how far down it goes. And yeah, pretty freaky. Someone could just be messing around and just fall in there, and who knows, they might be lost forever. So quite intense. Very, very deep chasm under this water, and of course, as the title says, it will be cold and dark. This water, as we can tell by the environment, would be absolutely freezing, and the likelihood of just sinking to your doom is high, because I'm sure when it's that cold, the muscle seizes and movement isn't quite as easy. So, yep, quite intense, quite the chasm, and yeah, wanted to share that one. Going on to the next one, we have this posted by user SpacePrince96, and it's a bridge that they crossed when walking their dog. They took it at 5:30 p.m, which makes me think they're in the UK, because that's how dark it gets here around that time. It leads to a grassy park area with no streetlights, and you can see it's sort of a well-lit bridge leading off into a dark and foggy night. It's a nice picture. Again, it's that mysterious unknown. It's just a darkness. Obviously, this person's just on their dog route, but just looking at it as someone who doesn't know this place, I'm sure lots of us would probably pull out our phones and get our torches out as we start to approach the end of this bridge, just to make ourselves feel a bit more comfortable. So again, I thought it was a nice picture, not the spookiest thing, but it is just cool. It's a nice dark aesthetic. If it was a bit cleaner, a bit more high res, I could even see this being the poster for something, so like The Conjuring or something written here, right? So thought it was cool, thought it was worth a look. And with that, we're going to move on to the last one, and this one's a bit sillier, and it is this really bizarre looking pie. And it says, posted by user 15_Rema, you have heard of creepypasta, now get ready for unsettling pastry. And it's this, bloody looking pie with pieces of its face stitched on, got a bit of dodgy hair here, and it very much looks like, it's bleeding from the eyes with the jam or whatever filling it is, the sauce. They've done the stitching with the pastry, and it just looks a bit like it could be some kind of horror movie villain, especially those older, lower budget films where they had random objects come alive, and this one obviously is the living pie. So I liked it. It's definitely freaky. They did a really good job cooking it. It got the pimples and pustules, the segmented, stitched on look, like, I don't know, like Leatherface or somebody. Very cool. Very different. A nice original idea for a pie. Yeah, so that's the last one. That was it really. I did plan on playing a game at the end of this video, but it's already gone on to 2 hours, so I'm going to have to stop here for this episode. But thank you for being here. Thank you for sticking through it with me. I hope, you've took something away from this. If you have anything you want to debate or challenge me on, or you want to make a point, put it down in the comments. Make sure to leave your comment. Tell me what you think. And yeah, I hope that, you walk away from this and you take something away from it. And if not, tell me why, Like and subscribe. Plenty more coming. This was episode 9 now, so we're making progress. And yeah, I will see you on the next one, where we're probably going to talk about, I think the next episode we might talk about the alpha, beta, sigma culture that we have. That's where we're going to get onto the other of the big four, being Andrew Tate. Just saying his name feels like a bad omen. He's got a very strong following, a very passionate following. People really do ride for him, cape for him, all those things. But I do think that the culture that we have right now of this alpha, beta, sigma mentality is worth talking about, especially how it's affecting this culture war situation and people's attitudes and the things people are doing in their lives, in their worlds, to try and live up to this stuff. And yeah, we'll talk about that and a couple of other things. Of course, we'll look at the headlines and we'll just see how these situations develop over the next few hours. So again, thank you for being here. Thank you for sticking through it. Hope you enjoyed, and I will see you on the next one. Take care.